Good morning and welcome to the new edition of my live comments. Compassion is good, but when compassion becomes so addictive that it can injure you, then is it good? That's a question that is to be faced by the Canadians today. The immigration minister, the federal immigration minister, Mr. Hassan, changed a policy that has been operating for the last 40 years. And both the liberals and the conservative governments presumed that policy to be good. But the new brooms sweep clean. Trudeau is facing an election year, and his new immigration minister from Somalia has to sweep clean. So why not overturn 40 years of provenly good Canadian immigration policy? And when Mr. Hassan introduced the new policy, I was amazed that he did not consider the financial aspect. And not only he did not consider, but the policy announcement was made without giving any details of the costs involved, both at present and in the future. And this change in policy is likely to have an increased burden on the already stressed healthcare system. And when I look at the long waiting lines in the ER, when I look at how long the people have to wait for major surgeries, when I witness that finding a family doctor is a problem many a times, then is this change really desirable? This policy change is that now intellectually and physically disabled immigrants and those prospective immigrants suffering from disease can come to Canada. Till now, the people who were disabled mentally or physically could not come, because the governments realize that the moment they come, after 3 months of the wait, they'll be entitled to all the benefits. So the government has very benignly, very benevolently done away with this policy that bars the coming of intellectually and physically disabled immigrants. And let me repeat once again that this was the policy which was upheld not only by the conservative government, but also for the liberal government. It has been there for the last half a century. You see, possibly you can afford to be very compassionate, very benevolent, full of charity and milk of human kindness, if you don't have to foot the bill. Here, who foots the bill would be the provinces and ultimately the voters. The general electorate may not like this change in policy. The reason in the policy, earlier policy, was to ensure that the provincial healthcare systems did not face increased, enhanced healthcare costs as a result of immigration, and thus ensuring there was more money in place to help the Canadian citizens. But now that era is coming to an end. After 4 decades, the federal government is getting rid of the rules that turned away the would-be immigrants suffering from intellectual or physical disabilities. The government will no longer be allowed to reject permanent resident applications from those with serious health conditions and disabilities. And this change was announced just this week. But he did not reveal, as I said earlier, the impact of this on the health and social service costs. Rather, he said that we will see the changes, how they'll impact. We have to wait and see what the numbers will be before I even think of the financial impact. This is possibly the first time in the history of the world that a decision has been taken which has financial implications without considering the rate of return, the cost involved, and how you're going to meet it. He later on agreed and said that the cost of the changes would be announced later on. But he was very unclear, would that mean additional money in health services or social services? Because the Liberals are very fond of welfare and the social services, again to the detriment of the common Canadians. And then, the current provision in the medical disability, inadmissibility, he says it lacks the quality of inclusion that is a Canadian value. And I laughed when he said these changes would enable the newcomers to contribute and not be a burden to Canada. A person suffering from a disability comes here and starts drawing upon the funds, whether as a social welfare or as a health cost, and the Honorable Minister says that it is not going to impact our economy or our social fabric. He is aware that the health costs for the Canadians are covered by the provincial governments. So the government doesn't even know the financial tag. The financial tag is known by the provinces. I do not deny that compassion should be at the heart of the system. But not that compassion that makes changes without any idea of how much it will cost. Because 100% of the cost for the health care is met by the provinces. And in case the government wants to help the provinces, it will offload as a transfer to the social services. And once you transfer it to social services, it has to be used for welfare or disability funds, not for the healthcare costs. I remember an incident about a month back. The Prime Minister was addressing a meeting of veterans. And the veterans demanded something. And his response was, well, we are not able to give you anything now. We don't have the money. And yet, he is willing to overturn a 40-year bipartisan consensus on immigration policy, which will increase in financial burden on the system. He doesn't have money to give to the veterans. His exact words are, you are asking for more than we are able to get. Does he have a sound sleep at night with these conflicting statements? There is no connection in what he says to one of the most marginalized groups which have sacrificed their life and given their blood for the country. He has no money for them, but he has money to give to those people who are suffering and want to come to Canada. I have absolutely no grudge if the people are coming to Canada, and it did not cause a burden to the ordinary citizen. But might be, it's not a bad idea. Well, Canada is known for its health care, and the immigrants must be missing having smallpox, polio, diphtheria, TB, which are running rampant in some of the countries. The horrific birth defects from the first cousin marriages might be popular with some of the newcomers. And don't forget, there'll be boom to the plastic surgeons as they remove the assorted third appendages. Quite possible. But then, is that really what we want Canada to be? As long as I feel these disabled masses can hobble, crawl, drag, or be dragged to the welfare centers, there is no way the problem can be addressed. Any associated cost can be addressed by simply introducing an invalid immigrant levy on all able-bodied indigenous Canadians, was the suggestion by one of the WAGs in a humorous way. The pain the Canadians would feel to provide the healthcare costs is simply too much. But the Canadians are basically polite. They do not mind being shunted to the back of the medical line by the third world mutants. Again, when I say that, it's with pain. I'm an immigrant, but I ensure that I pay my dues to the government. I came as a business immigrant and set up a business, hired people till my commitments were completed. So why should I now be responsible for paying the cost of a person who is already suffering? Now, when an immigrant comes here and falls sick, I can understand then that the social system is responsible to take care of him, which is a very good thing. But to take in a person who is already suffering and we know that he is going to be burden on us, why should we do that? In case we were a community with surplus funds, in case we were a country where all people have been taken care of and there are no waiting periods in the emergency rooms and we have money to burn, I can accept this change. But when I see that the people have to wait for 8 to 9 hours in the emergency rooms, when the people have to wait for 9 months for hip surgery or a knee replacement, when I see that the number of the family physicians for the people is too low and many people just use of walk-in clinics because they don't have a family doctor, then this change in the policy is bad. And thirdly, it's not only going to affect the financial health of the country, it will also affect the physical health. Quite possible that people with some diseases which might be infectious, maybe hiding in the body, they come in because now the medical test would be very perfunctory. And they might spread epidemics. Who will bear the cost of those? Both as the cost, that's the monetary cost, and the health cost. There are hundreds and thousands of questions. And for 50 years, when the top economists, the health professionals, the immigration experts, and the governments decided that that policy was a policy, appropriate policy, removing that policy only with the hope that the people who come would vote for the party which is making the changes, is absolutely unwelcome. As a matter of fact, we have a compassion got haywire. Possibly, I think that our leaders are suffering from a death wish. Death for the Canadian values. Death for the Canadian system. Death for everything we hold near and dear. Why? My $1 million question from the Honorable Prime Minister, from the Immigration Minister, and the entire cabinet is this country a lab or an orphanage for the whole world? which in return might make these people hewers of wood and drawers of water? Would we ever try first to look to our issues before extending benevolence to the others? Would we ever consider the facts in the light of reality rather colored by hue of compassion and the desire for being treated as benevolent people by others who have no problem? Well, you are doing great. You get refugees, which other countries refuse. Well, you are very nice people. We are extra nice. A time has come for us to be a bit more restrained in our generosity. Let's not forget the old adage, charity begins at home. Thank you.